Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Have you heard that the flavored air category is quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking? It's a whole new movement towards better habits, led by the sponsor of today's video, Fume. Flavored air helps people stop bad habits, and Fume leads the charge with its award-winning flavored air device. Fume is not a vape. It contains no nicotine, no batteries, is non-toxic, and has no vapor, meaning you can use it anywhere. Fume allows you to draw flavor into your mouth and helps you fill the void when ditching your bad habits. It's made from high-quality material and is made to fidget with. It lets you do something with your hands with its magnets, snaps, and clicks. Fume has lots of delicious flavors to choose from, including spearmint ice, raspberry lemon, and orange vanilla. Fume also continuously invests in third-party studies to ensure the safety of their products and is backed by doctors in the US. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code PWPMTG to get your free topper. It's the perfect accessory to your Fume device. Slip it into the mouthpiece for a softer, warmer feel. It's chewable for those who love to fidget, and it's reusable. Head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com, and use code PWPMTG or scan the QR code on screen to get your free Fume topper when you order your journey pack today. A big thanks to Fume for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Ryan, piloting Nixilis, Captive Kingpin. This deck seeks to cast its commander, ping opponents, and get a ton of cards. It then uses those cards to execute a number of combos, like Dualcaster Twin Flame, Walking Ballista and Agatha Soul Cauldron, or just attacks and kills with a massive Nixilis. Next, we have Zeb, piloting the Master of Keys. This deck attempts to put a bunch of cards into the graveyard through self-mill or discard. It can leverage its commander for additional value or try to win with Thassa's Oracle. After that, we have Ian, also known as Comedian MTG, piloting the partner pair of Dargo the Shipwrecker and Silas Wren, Seeker Adept. This is a proactive Grixis deck using a lot of sacrifice synergies from Dargo to gain advantage. It then tries to win with the classic Oracle or Underworld Breach lines. Finally, we have Aqua, piloting Najeela the Blade Blossom. This deck seeks to gain advantage with the best cards in the format. It attempts to win with infinite combats and its commander, or Chthonian Nightmare loops. And as a quick note, this game was recorded before the recent bannings. You will see one or two of the banned cards, but we thought this game was interesting enough to still show you all anyway. Enjoy! Without further ado, let's kick off this big bad bombastic bash. Ryan lost the most money on the recent bannings and gets to start us off. But Zeb has a pre-game action and puts Leyline of Anticipation onto the battlefield. Ryan draws a card for turn, plays a snow-covered mountain, and passes. Zeb draws and plays a Polluted Delta. He passes. Ian draws and plays a Forbidden Orchard. He casts a Mana Crypt. Ian ends his turn. Aqua draws and plays a Polluted Delta. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Bayou onto the battlefield. He casts a Chrome Mox, imprinting Mystic Remora. He casts Polywog Prodigy. He gives the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays an Ancient Tomb. He taps it to help cast Birgi, God of Storytelling. Ryan passes. At the end of Ryan's turn, Zeb cracks his Polluted Delta, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. Zeb draws and plays a Scrubland for turn. He casts Cabal Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Necropotence. He activates Necropotence 20 times, paying 20 life, exiling 20 cards. He moves to his end step and puts the Necro cards into his hand. In the end step, he flashes in a Chrome Mox through Leyline of Anticipation. Polywog Prodigy triggers and Aqua draws. Chrome Mox enters and Zeb imprints sink into Stupor. He casts Chain of Vapor, targeting his Necropotence. Necro bounces and Zeb doesn't continue the chain. Still in the end step, Ian taps Forbidden Orchard, giving Ryan a Spirit to help cast Tainted Pact. He exiles from the top of his library, including a lot of his win cons, until he reveals a Cabal Ritual, putting it into his hand. Then Zeb discards the hand size, and the turn moves to Ian. During its upkeep, Ian loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and plays an Otawara, Soaring City as his land for turn. He casts Relic of Legends. He taps Forbidden Orchard, giving Zeb a Spirit to cast Cabal Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts a Necropotence of his own. Ian activates Necro 5 times, paying 5 life, exiling 5 cards. He moves to his end step and puts the Necro cards into his hand. He passes, discarding to hand size, exiling the discarded cards. Aqua draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. He casts a Jeweled Lotus. He cracks it to help cast his commander, Najeela the Blade Blossom. Polywog's Evolve triggers and gets a +1/+1 counter. He casts Noble Hierarch. He moves to combat and attacks Zeb with Polywog. Hierarch's Exalted triggers and Polywog gets +1/+1. Zeb blocks with the Spirit, and Aqua ships the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and taps Ancient Tomb to help cast Kessig Flamebreather. Birgi triggers and Ryan adds a red. He casts Roiling Vortex. Birgi and Kessig triggers, each opponent takes 1, then Ryan adds another red. He moves to combat and attacks Ian with Birgi and his Spirit. Ian takes it, and Ryan gives the turn to Zeb. During his upkeep, Zeb takes the damage through Roiling Vortex. He draws and casts Silence. Polywog triggers and Aqua draws. Unfortunately for the table, Silence resolves. Zeb casts Animate Dead. It enters and he returns Hoarding Broodlord from his graveyard to the battlefield. It triggers and Zeb fetches up a card into exile face down. He plays a command tower from exile as his land return, which is what he fetched up. He casts Sacrifice, sacrificing Hoarding Broodlord as an additional cost, adding 8 black. Polywog triggers and Aqua draws. He casts Reanimate and Aqua draws again. Zeb returns Hoarding Broodlord to the battlefield and Zeb loses 8 life. Broodlord triggers and Zeb fetches up a card into exile face down. He taps Broodlord to help convoke Saw in half, sacrificing Broodlord, creating 2 copies. They both trigger and Zeb fetches up 2 more cards into exile face down. He taps his Broodlords to help convoke Beseech the Mirror from exile, sacrificing Broodlord as a bargain. He fetches up Thassa's Oracle into exile, casting it. It enters, and with a trigger on the stack, he casts Tainted Pact from hand, exiling his library. Oracle's trigger resolves, and Zeb wins the game. Before Game 2, Ian has a pre-game action putting Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Impulsive Pilfer. Zeb draws, plays a Forbidden Orchard, and passes. Ian draws and plays a Floated Strand. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts the One Ring. It enters, and Ian gains protection from everything. He activates the One Ring, adding a burden counter and drawing a card. Ian ends his turn. Aqua draws and plays a Taiga. He casts a Lotus Petal. He exiles Simian Spirit Guide from his hand, adding a red. He casts his commander, Najeela the Blade Blossom. Aqua passes the turn. Ryan draws and plays a Sulphurous Springs. He casts a Mana Vault and ships the turn. Zeb draws and plays a Mana Confluence. He taps it and Forbidden Orchard, giving Ryan a spirit to help cast Lotho, Corrupt Sheriff. He casts a Mana Crypt. Lotho triggers and Zeb loses a life and creates a treasure. Zeb ends his turn. During his upkeep, Ian wins his Mana Crypt roll and loses a life to the One Ring. He draws and plays a Marsh Flats. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He activates the One Ring, adding a counter and drawing 2. He casts Relic of Legends. Ian ends his turn. Aqua draws and plays a Mana Confluence. He casts Ignoble Hierarch. He moves to combat and attacks Ian with Najeela. Ignoble Hierarch and Najeela trigger, Aqua creates a warrior tapped and attacking Ryan, then Najeela gets +1/+1. In response, Ian flashes in an Orcish Bowmasters. It enters, kills the warrior, and Ian amasses Orcs 1. Then Ian blocks Najeela with the Orc army. In his second main phase, Aqua taps Mana Confluence to cast Delighted Halfling. Lotho triggers and Zed loses a life and creates a treasure. All through, Aqua passes. Ryan draws and plays a Scalding Tarn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He taps Sulphurous Springs to help cast his commander, Nixilis, Captive Kingpin. He moves to combat and attacks Zeb with a Spirit. Zeb takes it, Nixilis triggers and gets a +1/+1 counter, and then Ryan exiles a Lightning Bolt. Ryan passes. At the end of Ryan's turn, Zeb casts Intuition. He fetches up an Academy Rector, Animate Dead, and Sabine's Reclamation. Ian gives him Academy Rector, and the turn moves to Zeb. During his upkeep, Zeb wins his Mana Crypt flip. He draws and plays a Scrubland. He taps Forbidden Orchard, giving Ian a spirit to help cast Academy Rector. He taps Mana Confluence, adding a black. Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles a Swamp. Zeb casts Demonic Tutor. Lotho triggers and Zeb loses a life and creates a treasure. Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles an Arid Mesa. Then Zeb fetches up a card into his hand. He casts Sacrifice, sacrificing Academy Rector as an additional cost. Academy Rector triggers, Zeb exiles it, and then fetches up an Omniscience onto the battlefield. Then Zeb adds 4 black through Sacrifice. Next, Zeb casts Hoarding Broodlord for free through Omniscience. It enters, and Zeb fetches up a card into exile face down. He convokes Broodlord to help cast Beseech the Mirror from exile. He fetches up Saw in half into exile, putting it into his hand. He casts Saw in half for free. Zeb destroys Broodlord, creating 2 more. They both trigger, and Zeb fetches up 2 cards into exile face down. He convokes 2 Broodlords to help cast Yawgmoth's Will from exile. He casts Sacrifice from his graveyard, sacrificing Broodlord, adding 8 black. He casts Beseech the Mirror from his graveyard, sacrificing Mana Crypt as a bargain. He fetches up a Thassa's Oracle into exile, casting it. It enters, and in response, Zeb casts Tainted Pact from exile, exiling his library. Oracle's trigger resolves, and Zeb wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, what a crazy set of games tonight. Congrats to Zeb on his win. I'm not gonna lie, we really didn't expect this deck to be as fast as it ended up being tonight. The ability for Zeb to go off so quickly really caught the table off guard, putting down their defenses in both games. His lines had multiple paths and allowed him to be resilient. This deck surprised everyone tonight, and we loved it. The most valuable card in tonight's games goes to Hoarding Broodlord. This card really did the heavy lifting for Zeb tonight. Fetching a card, then letting Broodlord help pay for what he fetched up really helped Zeb's lines. When you lean into this card, you can really pull out some crazy lines. We are excited to show everyone what CEDH looks like in the new post-ban mana, so stay tuned for that in the coming weeks. A big thanks again to Ian and Aqua for playing in tonight's games. You can check out their deck list and their social media in the description below. A big thanks again to Fume for sponsoring today's video. Check out the link in the description to find out more. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.